Now we're moving on to what I would consider the most important part of our discussions. Why am I saying this? It's because, think about it, brothers and sisters, the main objective of the Quran is to make people realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves worship, not necessarily that He exists. Because it's part of the innate nature, as we addressed yesterday, part of the fitrah, that there is already some kind of acknowledgement of the divine in some way. And if we remember the discussions of the fitrah, that within the fitrah we have forms of knowledge. One of them include the acknowledgement of the Creator and the fact that He deserves praise. But the fitrah gets clouded. It gets clouded. So since the fitrah gets clouded, our job is to uncloud the fitrah to awaken the truth within. And therefore we understand that rational arguments are good, sound rational arguments are good, but they have an objective. They are not an end, they're a means to awaken the truth within. And other things can awaken the truth within, like spiritual experiences, ibadah, whatever the case may be, as we discussed yesterday. Now, you could just tell them why Allah deserves worship, and that could awaken the truth within as well, even if they don't believe in the Creator. And this whole discussion is very important because it will strengthen your own understanding of why I should be related to Allah, why I should have a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it really talks to us, why we should worship Allah, which is something that we don't really know. Like, we probably know more about, Socrates than we know why Allah deserves worship. Even though this is the main priority of the Muslim. It's our raison d'etre, it's our reason for existence. And when we bring up our children, we should teach them why Allah deserves worship. But sometimes we just teach children do's and don'ts. And this is quite problematic. From the point of view that you could talk about do's and don'ts, but if they don't know the why, then the do's and don'ts will they'll become a mechanistic human being with no presence, with no relationship with Allah. And they'll just end up participating and being a member of the ethno-religious cult that we call Islam or Muslims. And that's the problem. We have these religious identity markers, like the way we look, which is important, and just the things that we do, which is important. But if you don't have the basis, which is, I believe in Allah, I have internalized that, I accept that He deserves worship, my state of being is going to be such that I relate to Allah from the point of view that I am His servant, He is my master, and I understand why Allah deserves worship, and that affects my heart, what I say and what I do. That's Islam. Islam is not a belief, like this is a chair. Islam is not that kind of belief. It's just a chair. So what? What does this chair do to me? Does it affect my life in any fundamental way? It's an abstract piece of information. We've treated Islam like an abstract piece of information. Tick box. I believe in God. I believe in His messenger. Shaitan does that too. Shaitan knows that there is no God but God, and Shaitan knows that Muhammad is His messenger. Well done. You've acknowledged what Shaitan has acknowledged. Bravo. Right? But Islam is not like that. Islam is a state of being. It's a form of knowing that affects your state of being. We know Allah exists and He deserves worship, and that affects our being from the point of view that it affects our heart, what we say and what we do. That's fundamentally different than saying, I know this is a chair. And it's fundamentally different from saying, I know God exists and I believe Muhammad is His messenger. This is the greatest disservice that we could do to our children and our community by thinking that Islam is just those set of beliefs. It's not. Fundamentally, it's not. And when we have people embrace Islam, we say to them, just say this: there is no God but God, and Muhammad is His messenger. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I call that shaitan's shahada. I do. It is shaitan's shahada. The shahada is actually there is no deity worthy of worship, and you have intention to worship Him. And that Muhammad is His final messenger, meaning He has shown you how to have a relationship with Allah. That has to be there. I remember many years ago, we had 24 shahadas in a city, Leicester. Many of you may know in Leicester, if you come from the Deobandi tradition, right? Leicester, 24 shahadas. How many of them stayed Muslim? Zero. Because we had the false approach of saying, yeah, look, this makes sense. There's a creator. Yeah, we call him God and Allah and Muhammad. You know, this is evidence for his prophethood. That's all you have to do. Just believe in those things and you become a Muslim, you go paradise. Really? No worries. I believe there is no God but God. Muhammad is his messenger. Thank you very much. I'm going to the pub. Give me some pints of beer. Right? Because it's the way we communicate Islam to people. And this is a symptom of our spiritual malaise, because you can only give with that which you have. If you don't have that understanding, you can't give that understanding. And this is a fundamental problem. It is a fundamental problem. And, you know, I'm very bitter about the whole thing, of course. I'm like, you know, I am genuinely bitter. And I'm actually, you know, I'm not proud of my bitterness, but, you know, I think it's a good sign. I remember when I first became Muslim, I joined a group, which was probably the worst years of my life. And I didn't understand Islam how it should be understood. There was no ruhaniyah, no spirituality, no understanding why Allah deserves worship, no link between the heart and mind. It was an absolute joke. Felt very bitter about the whole thing. And, you know, and when I started to learn Islam a little bit more, and in a more comprehensive, holistic way, I was like, oh my God, why wasn't I taught this? Why wasn't I told this? You know? And we shouldn't do that disservice to our brothers and sisters in humanity. We shouldn't do a disservice to our brothers and sisters, and we shouldn't do a disservice to our own children. So we should try and bring up our children from the point of view that they realize that Islam is not just ethno-religious markers, yeah? Rather, Islam is a form of knowing that affects your state of being. That is fundamentally a different way of looking at Islam. And it's the way the Sahaba saw Islam, right? And it's the way the Prophet ﷺ explained Islam. Even the concept of Iman, right? And the concept of being a Muslim, a mu'min, and a muhsin, you know, it all makes sense when you understand Islam in this way, because we have secularized our religion, thinking Islam is a set of beliefs, just like abstract beliefs, like there is a wall, there is a table, you know, and here is a human being on the stage. That's not Islam. Islam is a form of knowing that affects your state of being, which affects your heart, what you say and what you do, how you become, how you relate in the world. And that's Islam. And if you explain Islam that way, it makes you understand how you could bridge the gap between abstract information and who you become. Because we know what good food is, right? As I explained yesterday. Vegetables, fruits, and grains. But what do we eat today? Junk, pizza, chips, right? So why is there a gap between what we know in an abstract way and who we become? That's human beings. And the way to bridge that gap in Islam is by having a relationship with Allah and traversing a spiritual path. Ibadah, salah, salawat, dhikr, dua, reading Quran, tadabbur of Quran. These things bridge the gap between abstract knowledge and who you become. This is fundamentally important. So for your children, you need to show to them, you know, why must Allah be worshipped? Right? Which they probably don't know, unfortunately. And we should fundamentally change our education at home. Fundamentally. Like we teach our children wudu, right? We teach our children how to pray salah, which is great. But there's no point teaching that if they don't know why. You have to measure both together. Because when they grow up and get older, they're going to ask why. And it was too late now, or almost too late. You know, there's always hope. Because all they've done is become a human doing, not a human being. Right? They just do. Because I identify with this, I'm a bit brown, I happen to be Muslim, so these things are my ethno-religious markers. Yeah? And that's why sometimes I tell people, you know, you're wearing a thobe, a new Muslim wears a thobe. Ah, mashallah, you're dressing like Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl wore a thobe, right? I mean, fiqh, what is the clothes of Prophet ﷺ? Do you see my point? Don't get me wrong. It's the best way to cover your aura. If you do it because you love the Prophet ﷺ, and he wore that as well at some point. But he also wore other clothes, like Yemeni clothes and Byzantine clothes. He was an internationalist from that point of view, yeah? So sometimes I like to break this ethno-religious understanding of Islam because it creates more awakenings for people in some way. Because otherwise, Islam just becomes a cult. by the very definition of what a cult is. Don't get me wrong, we have to respect our elders, and we respect our ulama, and we love our elders and our ulama, but that's a different story. There's a difference between being ethno-religious and just having a scholarly tradition and respecting it, yeah? So that's my advice for your children, is to instill that within them. So they know why Allah deserves worship, because that's why I worship. That's my whole point of existence. If they don't know that, then we have a problem, right? We have a big, big problem, you know? So, yeah, and that's why when we teach, if we teach fiqh, especially, you know, whoever does teach fiqh, in a modern world, in a Western context, maybe we should spend the first part of doing that is by saying, well, why are we worshipping in the first place? Don't assume, because those assumptions are actually false. Many people have no idea how they've placed themselves in the universe and where their heart is inclining towards. You know? And that's why this topic is absolutely fundamental. I actually wrote a whole chapter in my book on this, because there was nothing in the English language that I even found that was adequate to explain why Allah deserves worship. Isn't that such a shame? Isn't that a shame? Yeah? There was nothing in the English language that details why Allah deserves worship in a comprehensive sense. There was nothing I can give to my father. What a shame. What has happened to us as a community? SubhanAllah. We've been here for decades. And even in our outreach, we haven't articulated something that represents the main essence of our tradition. How many books on wudu do we have? Not so many, man. How many books on salah do we have? We don't have a book on why Allah deserves worship. Do you see the problem here? Or is it just me? Do you see the problem here? Is there something that we need to revive within us, right? Maybe we've had misplaced assumptions. I don't know what it is, but it's a really, really sad state of affairs. You know? Very sad state of affairs. Something that we need to fix and maneuver, you know? It's very important. Islam is not just an ethical tradition. Islam is not just a community. It's bigger than that, you know? The reason I'm still a Muslim is because there is a truth that transcends reason, that transcends anything. It's so binding, it's so obvious. It's haqq al-yaqeen. It's the truth of the truth, right? It's so self-evident and necessary that to deny it, you deny your own very existence, which is Allah deserves worship. That's it. And we need to give that to people because that's the essence of our tradition. Our tradition is there is no God but God. There's no creator but the Creator. Muhammad is the Prophet. There is no deity worthy of worship. So, let's go through this. The first thing I like to talk about is give a thought experiment. So it really awakens within us something that could be a key to worship. So I want you to think about this, brothers and sisters. There is something in your life that you receive freely at every moment that you don't deserve, own, or earn. Now that thing that you receive is this conscious moment and every conscious moment of your existence. We don't own our lives. We can't even create a fly. We didn't create ourselves. We don't necessarily earn it or deserve another moment of our existence. And life is so priceless. If I said to you, you had 10 minutes left to live, but in order to have another 10 hours or 10 days, you have to give me all your wealth, you would not think twice. You better take all my wealth and take my wife's wealth, right? You would give everything because that's how priceless life is. But we've become so heedless, we're in a state of ghafla, we don't understand these basic fundamental realities. So if it's true that Allah is giving us something that is priceless, freely, that we don't earn, own, or deserve, how should it make us feel? How? Grateful. And gratitude is the key to worship. Surah Al-Fatiha is the summary of the Quran. The first line of the summary of the whole of the Quran is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All perfect gratitude and praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Belongs to the Lord of everything that exists. Gratitude, shukr, hamd, praise is the key to worship. You're not grateful, you can't worship. Gratitude is the key to worship. And that's why if you start with this premise, everything grows now. Yeah. So before we get into why Allah deserves to be worshipped in detail, let's talk about what worship implies, or what it entails. Worship entails that you love, that you know Allah, right? Knowledge, to know Allah is a form of worship. That's what worship entails. To love Allah, okay? And you can't love Allah without knowing Him. Worship entails to obey Allah, and within that you have aspects of humility and obedience and servitude. And worship entails that you direct all your acts of worship to Allah alone. This is worship. We don't learn this though, unfortunately. We don't learn this in the masajid. We don't learn this at school, right? So, why dedicate worship to Allah alone? There are 7 reasons I want to go through, okay? 7 reasons why Allah deserves to be worshipped. You ready for these 7 reasons? Good. Reason number 1. Allah deserves to be worshipped because it's a necessary fact of His existence. Meaning, He deserves worship by virtue of who He is. Not by virtue of Him manifesting any bounties in your life. Allah deserves worship by virtue of who He is. Let me give you a thought experiment. Let me start with the story, right? I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, I'm not too sure. But I have a son, alhamdulillah. His name is Zakaria, 11 years old. He goes to the Muslim Scouts Forum. Every year they have the Muslim Scouts Olympics. So I attend one day. And he has to run the 200 meters. It's an indoor Olympic stadium. There's around maybe almost 1,000 people watching. And I'm thinking, I need to be a good dad. Yeah? So I say to Zakaria, Zakaria, don't worry about winning or losing. Yeah? Because you can win and still lose, and you can lose and still win. Because you could lose and you tried your best, which is real winning, and you could win and lose because you didn't try your best. I said, Allah has given you some abilities. You don't know what these abilities are. You don't know where your limits are. Only Allah knows. So maximize what's been given to you. Because if you have this ihsan, this excellence, it's a form of shukr to Allah. It's a form of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just try your utmost best, regardless winning or losing. Because if you win and you didn't try your best, then you actually lost. And remember, this is about you being grateful to your Lord because He's giving you certain things and you don't know where they are, so maximize them, boy. Right? So I'm in the middle of the playing field, the Olympic track around me. I've got Ilyas, my other son, on my shoulders. I've got my Bruce Lee top with the famous water coat at the back. I've got some trackers on with some, I don't know, God knows what I was wearing that day. I was a bit tired, I was all scuffled up. Yeah, and as you can imagine, there's a bunch of daisies around, a bit conservative, right? And the marks person says, on your marks, get set, go! And you just see Zakaria. Oh, this is beautiful. It was beautiful. It was like grace. It was just like style, speed, little legs going, He was like in the zone, and you could tell he was in the zone where he didn't care who was around. He was in the flow state. So I'm like, wow. So what happens to me? I'm Greek, man. We break plates at weddings. So where do I go? I'm like, beautiful baby! Amazing Zakaria! Beautiful! Beautiful! Well done, baby! And you see all these dainty aunties and stuff. Who the hell is this mad guy, yeah? I don't care what people think. I'm like, well done! Beautiful baby! Come on, Zakaria! Beautiful! I'm literally like this. Like insane madman, right? And then he comes second. And then he looks at me as if to say to me, he found something within himself that he never saw before. So I was reflecting on this, and I was saying to myself, why did I react that way? Obviously, you're a father, you like doing stuff like that, but why did I react that way? And I realized that I was praising my son by virtue of some sporting attributes that he had. Although those sporting attributes didn't benefit me directly in any way, I was still praising him by virtue of his attributes. And don't we do this all the time? Like with poets, we praise the poetic skill. Like Iqbal, when he said, this sajda that you find too difficult frees you from 1,000 sajdas. Or when he talked about a system of governance, he said, the white man once told me about a system of governance that counts man, but doesn't weigh him. Yeah, it's like Plato, what Plato said. So we praise people's poetic skill by virtue of their linguistic abilities and poetic abilities. We do this with sports people. Right? If you're a martial arts fan, if you saw Khabib versus McGregor, you're like, Khabib is a great wrestler. You're like, wow, Allahu Akbar, amazing, brilliant. By virtue of his sporting skill, his wrestling abilities, even though his abilities and attributes don't benefit in any direct way. We do this with singers, with nasheed artists. We praise people naturally and instinctively by virtue of their attributes, even though their attributes are deficient and flawed. So what does this mean about praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whose attributes are perfect to the highest degree possible? They are transcendent and they have no deficiency and flaw. It means Allah deserves an excessive praise from us, regardless if He has manifested those attributes in our lives or not. Because if you can praise someone by virtue of their abilities, and their abilities are not perfect, they're deficient and flawed, imagine how we must praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It just follows. This is why Allah deserves worship, because praise is a form of worship, by virtue of who He is, not by virtue of what He's given us. Because unfortunately, there's probably 60% of people in this room that only worship Allah because Allah has given you something. This is a terrible, terrible state to be in as a Muslim. Terrible state. It could have subtleties of shirk in it as well. Because you assume that you are equal business partners. That Allah gives you something, you give Him some salah in return. We have a transactional relationship with Allah, which is a disgraceful position to be as a Muslim. Unfortunately, this resonates in our lectures, in our khutbahs, in our narratives. Well, worship Allah, bro. Look, He gave you a wife. He gave you children. This is true. But it's premised on a transactional understanding with Allah, as if we're equal business partners. No, He is your master, you're His slave. Allah deserves worship even if you suffered an entire life. If you internalize this in yourself and your children, worship will be seen totally different. Allah deserves praise and worship by virtue of who He is, not by virtue of what He's giving you. So this is the first point to understand. And it's rational, intuitive, and makes sense. Human beings, even atheists, praise people by virtue of their attributes. Imagine how much you must praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has perfect attributes that are not deficient and flawed. So that's the first point. Second point, Allah created you. He's Al-Khaliq, the creator. He's Al-Khallaq, He's the perpetually creating. Allah created you and me. He created our life that we don't earn, own, or deserve. So this should instill within us a sense of gratitude, because life is priceless. If I give you $100 every day, after a year, you should be thanking me, not thanking the $100. Atheism is the existential equivalent of thanking the $100 and not thanking the one who gave it to you. That's ridiculous. It's imprudent. Yeah. So Allah deserves worship because He's your creator, and the khalq, the creation, is linked to the creator from the point of view of dependency. Because we realize that our own very existence was dependent on almost an infinite number of variables for us to exist. And those variables are all dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And dependency should create humility within us and a sense of obedience and connection, which is all part of worship. The third point, Allah provides us innumerable favors. Allah says in the Quran, you will never be able to count, enumerate individually Allah's blessings. And I'm not talking about a car, a house, and a wife and children. These are bonuses. Bonus! I say to my children, anything above a heartbeat is a bonus. Because you can't even count one blessing in your life. Here is the test. Here's the thought experiment. Your heartbeat, the thing that keeps you alive. Go for it. Count all the heartbeats you've had in a lifetime. Enumerate them. It's impossible. First 2 years you have a backlog. You don't know how to count. When you're sleeping you have a backlog. When you're eating, sleeping, driving, etc., backlog. You could never count, enumerate one blessing Allah has given you. Imagine anything else. And what's interesting, Allah uses the word blessing in the singular sense, which can also mean from a tadabbur point of view. You cannot even count one blessing. Forget blessings. Right? Imagine you had this mindset that anything above a heartbeat is a bonus. How would your life be? Would you moan and groan? People are so moaners. We moan about everything. Wallahi, we moan about food. We moan about our house. We moan about our wives. We moan about our children. We moan about our clothes. We moan about everything. SubhanAllah. Who the hell are you? Who am I? Who are we to moan about these things? We can't even be grateful for the very basic thing that keeps us alive. And you think you have the audacity to moan? Come on. Let's have some perspective, people. The Prophet ﷺ said that if you wake up with health, with shelter, and just risk for the day, food for the day, you know, you've been given everything. That's the meaning here. Everything would be, subhanAllah, you know? Perspective change. Perspective change. Just be grateful. Rationally and logically, you don't even have the ability to be grateful for one blessing, as we just discussed. So Allah deserves gratitude by virtue of the blessings and favors. The second point, if we love ourselves, we must love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Ghazali wrote about this in his 36th book in the Ihya, in his Revival of Religious Sciences. The book is called Muhabba, Uns and Rida, love, intimacy, and contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he doesn't discuss self-love as egocentrism or egotism. He said self-love is you want good for yourself. And this echoes what Erich Fromm said, the psychoanalyst, in his book The Art of Loving, which is a really good book, by the way. He said self-love is you want good for yourself. So if we want Jannah and goodness for ourselves, then we have to love Allah. Because Al-Ghazali argues that who created you? Who created the physical causes, the asbab in the universe that you use in order to achieve pleasure and run away from pain? It's Allah. So if you love yourself, you should love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So self-love should lead to divine love, loving the divine. Also, if we focus back now on Allah's names and attributes, it should instill the drive to want to love Allah. Why am I saying this? So, think about Allah's name, Al-Wudud, the excessively loving. Wud, coming from an Arabic word to give, right? So Allah's love is the giving type of love. And Allah loves, and His love is transcendent, cannot be compared to anything. Allah loves, and He doesn't need to love. Doesn't need to complete Him. Allah doesn't require completion. Allah loves, and He gains nothing by loving. Allah's love is so pure. The highest form of love that we could think about is a mother's love. And she loves because it fulfills her. She needs to love. Allah doesn't need to love, yet He loves. Imagine how much, imagine what divine love actually means. Now, if I were to say to you, in this room, right now, someone's going to come in and they're the most loving human being. Beautiful. Beautiful. They're the most, you couldn't make that up. Wallahi, you couldn't make that up. Allahu Akbar. So imagine the person that's came in this room is the most loving human being that would ever exist. Regardless if you're married or not, in your heart, you're going to be like, I need to know this person. If it was true that that person is the most loving human being ever to have walked on this earth, you'd be like, I want to get to know, my heart is inclined now. Allah's love transcends that love, is more pure than any love. Imagine how your heart must incline towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Habibi, Jazakallah khair. SubhanAllah. You are a miracle. Jazakallah khair. The other point of why Allah deserves worship, because worship defines who we are. And this is a very strong argument for atheists. And sometimes I don't even talk about philosophy atheists. I talk about these matters. I'm like, you're worshipping anyway. The default position of a human being is to worship. If it means to know something, to love something, to obey something, and to direct acts of worship like gratitude towards something, you're in a state of worship, my friend. You just have misdirected worship. That's it. Do you want to know something the most at some point in your life? Yes. Do you love something the most at some point in your life? Yes. Do you obey something the most at some point in your life? Absolutely. Do you show gratitude towards something the most at some point in your life? Absolutely. That's your object of worship. So worship is a natural thing that you do all the time. All we're here to say to you is that you have misdirected worship. Direct that worship to the one who deserves it. And this is very similar to what Allah said in the Quran. I believe chapter 39 verse 29. And the meaning is, consider the situation of two people. One man is a slave to many masters, and these masters are all arguing and quarreling. Another man is a servant to one master. Whose condition is best? If you don't worship Allah, you're worshipping something else. It defines who we are. Also, finally, worshipping Allah is part of who we are. Obeying Allah is also part of worshipping Him. And in a post-secular culture, to obey God seems like a very irrational thing to do. Obedience to Allah is the summit of reason. It's the height of rationality. Because you are submitting to the highest authority. Don't be like Shaitan, who wouldn't bow down to Adam, and he challenged Allah. Because he had the kibr, this arrogance. He denied the ultimate authority. Think about this. If human beings could submit to authorities all the time, because we don't have all knowledge, we have to submit to other authorities, doctors, pilots, professionals, people of expertise. We submit to the authority. If we could submit to the authority, then what does it mean about submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It will become the most rational thing to do, because you're submitting to the one who is Al-Hakim, who has the totality of knowledge and wisdom. And it follows it's the most rational thing to do. So these are 7 reasons why Allah deserves worship. And there are many more. And these are all applicable to articulate to atheists and to human beings, and to internalize yourself. Now some would argue, well, why did Allah, does Allah need our worship? No. Allah is Al-Ghani. He doesn't need our worship. If the whole world were to come to worship Allah, it wouldn't increase in His bounty and majesty. If the whole world were not to worship Allah, it wouldn't decrease His bounty and majesty. Therefore, the understanding is that we need worship. Now one would argue, well, why did God create us to worship Him then? And if that worship we need it, why do we need it? Well, think about this. Allah is Al-Bar. He is the source of all goodness. And it follows that He would manifest the greatest story ever told. And isn't it the greatest story ever told? That Allah will create free agents to choose between evil and good, and that they will pass a test, and therefore attain paradise that will be of eternal bliss and love of their Lord. This is one of the greatest good stories ever told. And Allah is manifesting His name and attribute of being the source of all goodness in the real world. So, all of your da'wah, all of your articulation with your brothers and sisters and your community and your non-Muslim brothers and sisters in humanity must focus also on why Allah deserves worship. Because that is the raison d'etre. After you talk about these abstract philosophies, make sure you link it to why Allah deserves worship. And every argument we spoke about in the past few days can be linked to worship. If the Quranic argument for God's existence shows that there is an uncreated creator, then link them to gratitude. Who created your life that you don't earn, own, or deserve, that is priceless? Allah. Therefore be grateful. The argument from contingency, the argument from dependency, that we are dependent on an independent necessary being, which creates a sense of humility. Therefore I should obey Him. Therefore I should be grateful to Him. Right? So every argument we use can be linked back to worship. Make sure you do this in your discourse. Otherwise you're doing them a disservice. You're telling them half the story. Allah deserves gratitude. Allah deserves praise by virtue of who He is. Allah deserves obedience by virtue of who He is. Right? And this fundamentally changes your ibadah. So sometimes, children don't always want to pray. Don't judge them. Do you always want to pray? If it wasn't fard, would you pray? Come on, man. Let's have some empathy here. But if you show to them the mere fact that you're just doing these actions with the right intention, even if you're a bit tired and you're not there, it's just an expression of a fundamental reality that Allah deserves praise. Allah deserves worship, regardless of how He's benefited me or not. And your mere fact of just doing it, that's why some ulama say, doing the 4 rakah sunnah before dhuhr, doing it is khushu'. Sometimes we look for, like some of the Hanabila, they say, if you have settled bones in your salah, that's khushu'. Sometimes you want like miracles happening when we're praying. Oh my God, I can see the angels, and the spiritual fireworks exploding in my heart, and I'm feeling so nice. That's a bonus. The mere fact that you have done a straight ruku, that you've got your forehead on the ground, that itself is a blessing. And that itself is an expression of why Allah deserves worship. Now, if you happen to have nice feelings after that, which you should, that's a greater gift. As Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah said, don't worship the feeling. Worship Allah. The feeling is a result of worship. Worship shouldn't be for the feeling. It's a subtlety, but it's very important. So that's what you teach your children. Yeah, Zakaria, I know you're not feeling it, bro. But remember, Allah just deserves worship, and what you're doing with your limbs is an expression of the ultimate truth. The feeling will come eventually. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. But have istiqamah. Yeah. Allah. Yeah? Do you see the point? Alhamdulillah. So, this is why Allah deserves worship, my beloved brothers and sisters. Great, okay, good. So we now have 40 minutes of Q&A. Okay? 40 minutes of Q&A. Alright? Yes, sir. By the way, did you put sugar in this?
No.
Alhamdulillah.
So I actually have 3 things. One, they saw the world round from the airplane multiple times.
You saw the world round?
Yeah, it's like curving around like that.
You didn't see the world round, you saw a curve. Did you see the sphere, the whole sphere?
Oh no.
So how did you see the world round?
The inside. Curving like that.
You saw a slight curve.
From all angles.
From all angles?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So does that mean the world is round, or could it be a semicircle? There you go, there's no proof, you're making an inference. Okay. Do you understand my point?
Yes, yes.
Good.
Exactly.
Apologize for the question.
Yes, the second thing. How would you convince somebody who says, okay, well, if God created us and He bestowed His bounty on us, but since He created us, isn't Allah's duty astaghfirullah, Allah is Almighty, to sustain us, to give us all this, health, food, and everything.
Is Allah under any moral obligation to give you
Yes.
what you want? No. Why is He?
Because He created it.
No, but He owns you. He can do what He wants to do. If I make a Lego robot, I could do what I want with the robot. I could put him in the kitchen, put him in the toilet, I could chop him up, I could do what I want with him. And Allah is not to be questioned, we are to be questioned, bro. Because Allah owns you. He could do what He wants. Right? So He's not under any moral obligation. But you know what? But He does. He does provide for you. Doesn't He provide for you, bro? How old are you?
I am.
24?
Oh no, I'm 36.
You're 36. Allah's taking care of you for 36 years. You look in good shape. You can articulate yourself. Shukr Allah, alhamdulillah, right? Well, khalas. There you go. The answer is you. It's looking in the mirror. You are the answer, right? But even if that weren't the case, Allah is under no obligation to give you the health that you want. Because life's a test. And what Allah expects you to do is to react to that test in a way that is pleasing to Him. Once you do that, then you'll have no complaints in paradise, inshallah.
Exactly.